rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss. He struck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
Hey, let's break down the Warriors game to start things off, okay? And Wiz Hawks. Let's talk about it now. 4-game suspension, fine, draft pick. Right on the money. No problem with it whatsoever. Predicted it, in fact. Let me start with this. The silliest thing the media and the fans do, and again, I always kind of let the fans do what the fans want to, because the fans are crazy, and they love their team, and they wear jerseys. But the media, comparing suspension has become the latest hacky media column. Well, Ray Rice only got 2 games, and Brady got 4. You do get that's what 7-year-olds do. Mom! I got grounded for the weekend. Sister didn't. That's what kids do. They compare suspensions. It's moronic. A, the NFL butchered the Ray Rice suspension and later admitted it. And by the way, it was so sloppy, but in the end, he didn't play. B, suspensions have always been arbitrary. That's why they should be handled by commissions and not commissioners. Because whoever decides it, you want it to be reasonably faceless, because there's no mathematical formula for suspensions. Okay? They're connected to climate and always have been. This happens 13 years ago, same infraction. Tom Brady probably doesn't get nearly as much because he's not the face of the league and it's not post-Ray Rice and other suspensions. Look around the country. The climate dictates not only suspensions but laws. Gay marriage, we're more progressive. Pot use, we've loosened up. Hate crimes, juries are less forgiving. Unions, America's not as pro-union as they used to be. Seatbelts, didn't have to wear them, suddenly did but couldn't be pulled over. Now you can be pulled over solely because you don't have a seatbelt on. We complain about suspensions, and fans complain that the NFL never listens, when in fact, yesterday, the NFL proved it does listen. You clobbered it for Ray Rice, and the NFL said, we're going all in and harsh on this one. You thought Ray Rice was too light. Now you think this one's too harsh. You say nobody listens to me. Now you're saying nobody listens to me. They did listen. There is such an anti-NFL climate, nobody can be reasonable and have any take on the NFL that's not outlandish. They did listen. They lowered the hammer, as predicted on this show. Big fine and suspensions. But if the media had listened to themselves, they would have realized these predictions of one game were silly. The NFL's media, by and large, were heavily critical, and the NFL took notice. I don't have a problem with the suspension, the fine, or the draft picks, and I don't believe the Patriots will win an appeal, although I do have a theory on that, how much will be reduced coming up. As far as Tom Brady and cheating, it's very interesting, isn't it? The thing that is now controlling the country is technology. We all admit that, right? The country is being controlled by technology. In fact, there are frightening predictions over the next 15 years that your job and my job may be eliminated due to robots. Okay, so technology is changing the landscape of America. But yet the tech sector, ever watch Pirates of Silicon Valley? It's part genius, it's part thievery. Steve Jobs was once quoted saying, good artists copy, great artists steal. He stole the mouse from Xerox. Microsoft lifted all sorts of things from Apple. You've heard the Facebook story. In technology, everybody's pushing the envelope. Thievery is understood. Invention is genius, but so is innovation. And the definition of innovation is somebody else's work and improving on it. They used to say Robin Williams ripped off all sorts of themes and bits. Do you think he's less of a genius? I don't think less of Tom Brady's legacy. I don't at all. because I look around the NFL right now, and I'm going to give you the harshest opinion on Tom Brady at this network. Here's Keyshawn Johnson's. He had about the harshest opinion on Tom Brady.
When I heard about it at first, I thought, and I look at it, I think it's a little light for him personally. The 4 games, I thought it should have been a little heavier, maybe 8 games or even more. You start going and doing things outside of the box to win games, I lose a lot of respect for you in terms of you as a player.
Okay.
I don't care what anybody says. Yes, he has championship rings, and he's the MVPs and all the great things. But at the same time, you did something to give yourself an advantage to win a football game.
Oh, okay. You don't like that. Where did you go to college? USC. They're on probation. Pete Carroll, NCAA infractions, led the league in performance-enhancing drug use since he arrived in 2010. Ravens, deer antler spray. Colts, PED. Falcons, bugged former Chiefs coach Todd Haley's phones during his GM tenure in Kansas City. Dolphins committed 3 counts of tampering in order to hire Don Shula. Cowboys, Redskins, salary cap violations. Bills are all about banned substances for 5 decades. Cheating. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Pete Carroll. Tom Brady's the only one. This was never about the infraction. It was about the obstruction. And it's not a radical penalty. If it was a radical penalty, how was I able to predict it? When I predicted Spurs over the Heat last year in 5, it wasn't a radical prediction. If it was, I wouldn't have nailed it. Bill Polian and I agree completely on what was handed down yesterday.
If you went right down the middle on this, if you had no dog in the fight, so to speak, that you weren't on the Patriots side or you weren't on the anti-Patriots side, this is probably where you'd come out. And so I think that Roger Goodell and company got it exactly right.
Colin, you are just, are you defending Tom or you? No, what I'm saying is, much like our tax code, we're all pushing the envelope a little. But when you're audited, be forthcoming. New England wasn't and deserves the penalty. But I'm not outraged by Adderall use in Seattle under Pete. I'm not outraged by deer antler spray from the well-run Ravens, nor am I outraged by ball deflation. But when you get audited, you got to be up front. Oh, this story just came over the wire in regards to pushing the envelope. Jim Harbaugh hasn't coached a game at Michigan, and yet this morning, the Wolverines have reported 4 secondary violations to the NCAA under Jim Harbaugh. Heard brought to you by Regis. New way to work. Call 1-800-OFFICES. 1-800-OFFICES. 3 months in, hasn't landed one recruit, and he's already pushing the envelope. That, my friends, is how Wall Street, Main Street, and Sport Street has always worked. Get caught, come clean.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Dan Shaughnessy, Boston Globe, long-time columnist, and one of the few moderate and reasonable voices in what has been an avalanche of almost goofiness from a lot of Boston fans and some media is joining us this morning. But you think, from what I can tell, that this, forget Pete Carroll, forget deer antler spray, you think this will stick to Tom's legacy, Dan. Why would that be?
Well, I think it's suspension. It's an asterisk. Guys don't have that. It's you go through your career. We still remember the Paul Honing thing from 50 years ago, and it does stay with you. And his record's so impeccable, and it's hard earned. And he's been great and clutch and team guy and the American hero story right to the max. Top shelf, no dust all the way. And then to have a 4-game suspension, which I do think will be reduced, but in my view, if there's a 1-game suspension, that's enough to taint the legacy, and it's really unfortunate.
Good companies and smart people have blind spots. How possible the blind spot for Belichick is obstruction, that his covert nature, he just can't change it even in crisis?
the whole organization is like this. They need to stop. They need to just say, you got us. Sorry, won't do that again. Everybody else is probably doing it too, right? And kind of go from there. They can't do it. And that gets into the whole obstruction of justice and, denying them McNally the last time. And they say, well, we gave them to you 4 times. They didn't give them to them after they got the text. Then it was they lawyered up and said, no, you can't have McNally anymore. Tom's thing, I understand. I wouldn't give my cell phone either. I get that. But if they're going to go for appeals and disclosures and, and fight this, I think that's probably going to get into that kind of exploration. And maybe they don't want that. I don't know. But the Patriots are incapable of just accepting blame for anything. Instead, it's what we call, deny, accuse. And they're painting themselves as victims now. It is a harsh penalty. I agree it's a harsh penalty. But that's a lot of because of the prior and because of the obstruction and the league obviously trying to reinvent itself regarding, penalties on integrity.
Dan, you've got such a unique insight and access that I don't in Boston, and few have who even live in Boston. Do you think there is some anger this morning with Kraft and Belichick at Tom?
I wonder what goes on inside the walls because, Bob Kraft got to Glendale, Arizona on that Monday and threw down the gauntlet, said his guys never lied to him, demanded an apology. He looks ridiculous now. He looks like a buffoon. And, so I'm going to say, did Tom really know nothing? And those press conferences that, the one Tom gave Costas at the Super Bowl, the one the week of after the AFC Championship when he really didn't know anything. And it doesn't appear that that's possible. The league certainly doesn't believe him. And the agent is running around calling everything ridiculous now. And we have not heard from Tom. I would hope that's coming soon. I think he could help himself.
I'm going to throw something out there that Belichick has always, it's in his nature to do this. He is kind of a contrarian. He was the first to start going for it on 4th down, the first to take the middle of the field, the first to kind of abandon the prototypical running game and do the short passing game. And it's also, I think, kind of in Bill Belichick's nature academically, like a Steve Jobs or a Gates. He's always pushing in technology. He's always pushing. And part of that is making the league office uncomfortable. Is it possible that Tom, a little bit of Belichick, has rubbed off on Tom, and that this is not Tom's nature, but it's rubbed off on him over 15 years?
I don't know about that. Your caricature of Bill is spot on. He's the greatest coach I've ever seen in any sport, up there with Auerbach, I guess, in terms of innovation and just history and knowing how to win, how to beat you. And this is one of the reasons that people are so gleeful around the country now, because they've been getting their ass beat for 15 years by these guys, and then they want to feel like there was something else going on. We'll never know the degree to which this helped at all, and it likely very little, if any. But, they put it in your face. Go back to that game against the Ravens with all the formations, and they tricked the Ravens. And Harbaugh complained about it, and it was, hey, go learn the rule book. Too bad, sucker. And then, 3 weeks later, the NFL changes the rules so they can't keep doing that. That's the Patriots. They love to give the league the finger, give everybody the finger, flip everybody off. And I think part of this response that's so harsh, which is overly harsh, is because of that and because they weren't fully cooperative. And there was a prior, and the league is just kind of tired of being bullied around by these guys. And don't forget, Goodell had to kind of stand up and show he wasn't going to be a bobo and a fanboy with Bob Kraft, because there's been an unholy alliance there over the years. And this was the commissioner's chance to, make the other 31 owners feel good.
Dan Shaughnessy at the Boston Globe. What do we know about this Garoppolo kid?
He's pretty good. This is what they do. And you go back to when Brady came on board in the 6th round at 199, and nobody even knew he was on the team. He was 4th-string quarterback in that year in 2000. But they saw something, and they kept him because of that. And he was ready when Mo Lewis hit Drew Bledsoe, and we saw what happened. I feel it's the same way with this guy. They saw something. They feel he was the best quarterback in that draft, and they've kept him around. And don't forget, Matt Castle won 11 games in 2008 when Brady, got hurt in the opener. And competitively, I don't think this hurts them too much at all. It's 4 games, if that, probably ends up being 2. Jacksonville's in the mix somewhere in there. They're going to win their games. They're going to win the AFC East. Same deal. Tomato can division. 3 teams without a quarterback in the Patriots. So they're going to be right there at the end once again, and it just will make the drama all the better.
Aren't you supposed to be covering the Red Sox out west?
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. I flew out here to the Oakland A's Red Sox series, and the Red Sox are the luckiest franchise in the history of sports. They're completely blowing up their season, just sucking on a daily basis, and no one's paying any attention.
Yeah, that whole American League East right now is when you know the Yankees are in command, it's not the greatest year for that division.
It's unbelievable. It's as bad as it's ever been, and that's one of the things that'll hold up the Red Sox a little bit. You almost can't play yourself out of it this year because the division overall is so soft.
Dan, great work as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
It's interesting. I don't think it will taint Brady's legacy. I really don't, because I think that millennials, especially young people, don't care about tradition. You know, I think as people age, older people care about tradition. But I think young Americans who love football, 17 to 28 to 30, they're not real look in the rearview mirror types. And they also grew up in a culture with more gambling and more sex and more pot. And society is different than years ago. There's fewer restrictions for people. There's a lot more entertainment options for people. I consider myself, I'm 50, so I should be kind of old school, but I tend to be more thinking along the lines of a millennial. That's just the way I was raised, and it's the way I think. And it's not because I love Brady. I just don't think about it. The way I look at this stuff is very similar to how I look at the tech sector. I don't think Bill Gates is any less genius because he ripped stuff off from Apple. And I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is any less genius because two guys at Harvard maybe came up with Facebook first. He still had to run the company the last 15 years and make it this monolith. When I look at Michael Milken on Wall Street, it didn't reduce his talent or his genius. He just got caught doing something he shouldn't have done. You got to be pretty smart to do what Michael Milken did and Bill Gates did and Steve Jobs ripped off Xerox to begin with. There is something about being cunning and smart. Remember, invention is genius, but so is innovation. And innovation is just taking something already invented and innovating it to a different level. I don't think that makes Bill Gates less of a genius. I don't think Tom Brady has a lower IQ, a worse work ethic, less drive, less focus, anything. I think he pushed like everybody does, from Pete Carroll to Lawrence Taylor to Deer Antler Spray to Ray Lewis. Push. That's how I see Tom Brady. The difference is when caught, he obstructed. Otherwise, there would be no suspension, or it would be marginal. If Tom Brady would have come up and Tom Brady would have said, I am so competitive, I am so bloody competitive that I am always on my ball boys to the very up to game time. They gave me those balls for the game, and I thought they felt too big, and we argued, and I said, I want a little less out of them, and it's my bad. I don't think he's got a suspension. I really don't. I don't think it'd be nearly as severe if Tom would have said, hey, it's who I am, I'm competitive, I'm going to take the heat on this, I was brutal. I am so tough on my ball boys that I am just constantly, I want it the lowest possible because I like the grip a little better, it's comfortable for me. But he didn't. I'll tell you this, though. Here's why sharps are sharps. Before Deflategate, Vegas favored the Patriots by 6, hosting the Steelers on opening Thursday. With Brady suspended, the current line now is Patriots -2, and it's only 4. Only a 4-point difference? Is Vegas crazy? Here's the key. Brady's value is 7. But because New England has the advantage of the entire offseason to prepare, that reduced it down to 4. Vegas considers, wise guys consider everything. What they're thinking in Vegas, and this is really smart, and this is the way companies work, May 12th today, September 10th, 4 months away, Belichick won 11 with Castle, he's got time to prepare. If you give ESPN 4 months to prepare for a crisis, they'll handle it much better than an hour. And in the end, Vegas is saying Belichick's the best coach in the league. He now has an off season to prepare for the Steelers. I'll tell you this, though, and I don't know what the line is. Buffalo at home the following week is going to clobber New England because they'll have a week of footage on Garoppolo, and that defense and that coach has given Brady issues.
Colin, you're missing the best part about the Sharps. The line originally went down to 1 and was bet up to 2, which means a lot of people, the Sharps, were betting on New England in that first game.
They think of everything, and of the many things they thought about here, I think the biggie is Belichick's got a bunch of time. And coaching is – this league's all about coaching and quarterbacking. I mean, that's 80% of games are coaching wins and loses and quarterbacking wins and loses. James, you're in the herd, James, and you go ahead.
The question I had, the Wells report, at the end, it says it was inconclusive. So how do you punish Brady for something that was inconclusive? And also, the coach ball also was underinflated. And then you have referees that's been in the league 20 years or more. So do you punish them also? Because they also should have known or felt the ball felt differently.
Well, first of all, inconclusive is not a word that any of us are unfamiliar with. What they talked about instead of inconclusive was a high probability. Circumstantial is the word you're really thinking about. And we have people in prison on circumstantial evidence. We have people in prison without actual tape. If you only put people in prison based on videotape, then the only people in prison would have robbed 7-Elevens. That would be it. Everybody else, free. It's just that 1% of guys who robbed convenience stores and Best Buy. Okay, because they have videotape. We have blood evidence, circumstantial, there's witnesses, there's grainy footage, there's time, place, receipts. So, I mean, if you go look at American tragedies, you piece together what you think happened. On airline disasters, you take a black box, you hear a pilot, you hear screaming in the background, you piece it together, the trajectory of the plane, the altitude when it dipped, how hard it's a lot of circumstantial, and they still think today that TWA flight, there are pilots. Barack Obama's former pilot thinks it was shot out of the sky because nobody trusts the FBI. So we've got FBIs we don't trust. The CIA has been mocked for years. Our federal government, state laws are different. We have people in prison on circumstantial. What the NFL said, more probable than not, after texts especially, Brady was involved. They're not putting him in prison. They're just going to suspend him, and he can appeal it. More likely than not, is over the legal threshold they needed. At least generally aware was also used. That's all the NFL needed for their threshold. Doug, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. Doug, go ahead.
Hey, Tom, I got a question for you. Do you think that the first round and the fourth round draft picks that they lost had anything to do with the fact that they won the Super Bowl? And had they lost the Super Bowl,
no.
Maybe it wouldn't have been as harsh?
No, and by the way, Doug, he's had Belichick in 2007 got a number one pick taken away, and it had no effect on the franchise. I think draft picks, I've said this, it is key to hiring cheap labor. You need draft picks. But losing an individual draft pick, I'll give you an example. Pete Carroll has done a great job in the draft, rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's whiffed on some early picks. Bruce Irvin, come on, that's a whiff. James Carpenter, please. James Carpenter couldn't get him out of town fast enough. Nick Saban, Aaron Curry was, he didn't really have, I'm not going to blame Pete for Aaron Curry because I don't think he had the time to really look at all those players. By the way, that Richardson kid, that wide receiver from Colorado that weighs 109 pounds, he's a bar stool. He can't stay healthy in college. He can't stay healthy in the NFL. He's not going to be a dominating NFL receiver. I think that's a whiff. Bruce Irvin's a whiff. James Carpenter was weak. So, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. So if you get 8 draft picks, you can whiff on the first one repeatedly if you got the right quarterback. Brady's suspension is the worst part of this, not the fine. In fact, think about this. When Brady's out for 4 games, they don't have to pay him. So actually, you could argue Robert Kraft saved money. I could argue you should have fined him $3 million, not $1 million. Kraft's like, actually, I saved some money. Yeah, the biggest part of this is Brady's out. Draft picks, I mean, what is it, 60-40 they make it? 40% don't make it at all, even in the first round.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Yes, it is true that of all the American media, once again, your favorite uncle, Uncle Ronaldo, last week and for the last few days, did predict 4 games for Tom Brady. If I was running the NFL, I'm going to go 4 games. I'd make the argument that Brady was guilty of obstruction, withholding evidence, perjury, and conspiracy to commit. That's a game each. Cover-up, far more crucial than what I regard to be an inconsequential crime of deflating a football slightly. Once again, America's honesty broker, Uncle Ronaldo, nailed that one.
Where Colin was really, really ridiculously right.
Yeah, I mean, nailed it.
I mean, he couldn't have been more right. I mean, I'm saying he was about as right as you can get. He was right in Roger Goodell's ear.
Okay, that's enough. Now here, I didn't know that was coming. That was pretty funny. So here is WEEI with a very predictable Boston Patriot fan base saying 4 games. This is really WEEI in Boston. Here are Patriot fans.
Is there any chance that maybe if Patriots fans band together and do some kind of class action lawsuit against the NFL? Because you only have a limited window in terms of success when it comes to any specific player.
Oh, gosh. You know what? There had to be some sort of suspension of fine. You know what? But what came down is ridiculous. I'm telling you, the league is just trying to keep the league even. It goes all the way from the league to the owners to Goodell. They're all filthy. I'm telling you, the integrity of the league sucks.
It does not add up mathematically, because if you guys deflate your balls a little bit, how is that going to make your team better than my team? You know as well as I know that a football has no outcome in a football game.
Any Patriots fan would know that forfeiting the first 4 games of the year would go down in the history books as basically the biggest protest to the crappiest league decision ever made.
Oh, come on, Dave. You want your team to forfeit 4 games to start the year?
Absolutely.
How about 0 for 6 on that? Class action lawsuit, forfeiting games, footballs don't affect the game. That's like the worst takes. That's a compilation of the worst takes ever in American radio history. God. It's just ridiculous. Now, I will throw this out. Brady and the Patriots, 35-4 in games played in the second half of every year since 2010. He's 38. They're more of a post-Thanksgiving team anyway. Fewer games, healthier, fresher, longer. We've seen Peyton Manning fall apart physically late November. I'll tell you, my feeling is if you look at Tom Brady, he's always been a better quarterback in October and November than September. You know, so could you make an argument that he's getting old, the backup gets some work, the team will be more motivated, Belichick will be ticked off, it'll be easier to get players in early and to stay late, and that Brady, at this point in his career, bringing back the same offensive unit that he had last year, it's not the world's worst thing? I mean, my feeling is they're going to beat Pittsburgh and Jacksonville and lose at Buffalo. And then they'll have a bye, and then they go to Dallas. And my feeling is the appeal, they'll get a reduction of 1 game. I don't think they're going to get it reduced to 1. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I really, and again, I've said this over and over, is that, you know, how much of this is Bill Belichick and the organization? And I had Dan Shaughnessy on. When you have people at the highest level cheating, we've almost become accustomed to that in American society on Wall Street, rich guy cheating to save his money. But when you have poor guy or middle class guy cheating, and he's not saving big money because he doesn't make it. That's about a cultural ethos. That is about a pattern. That is something that is created by the boss. And I think that's what the NFL, and part of this is Spygate, the tuck rule. There is sort of a sense when the ball boys are in on it and the high flyers. You know, it's one thing for Goldman Sachs top traders to cheat to save $11 million or make $11 million, but if the kid in the mailroom's cheating, then it's part of the culture. And I think that's what the NFL worries about. And Bill Polian used to have Troy Vincent's job, and he came out and he said, when you start looking at things, the NFL sort of nailed it.
If you went right down the middle on this, if you had no dog in the fight, so to speak, that you weren't on the Patriots side or you weren't on the anti-Patriot side, this is probably where you'd come out. And so I think that Roger Goodell and company got it exactly right.
And as Adam Schefter said yesterday, and I completely agree, it's not just about Belichick and Brady. It's about McNally and Jastrzemski. The little guys weren't candid.
It mentioned the fact that Jim McNally and John Jastrzemski were not candid during the interviews. We all saw and read the Wells report last week, and we saw how detailed it was. But we didn't know that the league believed that those two individuals were not candid, and they also blamed the Patriots attorneys for not making Jim McNally available in a follow-up interview when Ted Wells wanted to question him again.
If the little guy is willing to suppress evidence from the NFL, doesn't it tell you that the little guy believes it's understood in the organization to keep secrets from the league? That's a culture created. That's being understated here. To me, that's being understated. Is that we've always, look at history. The rich guy cheats to make or save millions. You kind of, in this society, well, you kind of look at, it was 25 million. Guy in the mailroom's cheating, you're like, oh, that's just what the place is. I think that's being underreported.
You're in the herd. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
I'm Israel Gutierrez. In the latest NBA Lockdown podcast, did the Clippers choke away their chance at their first Western Conference Finals? Download it at ESPN.com/PodCenter.
Comparing suspensions, this guy did that, so why doesn't this guy get that? We know that climates have always dictated as a parent. If your daughter does something moronic, and then your son, having watched her do it and be disciplined, does it, you may suspend him or ground him longer. That's why I've said it is just the worst place in the world. The worst job at ESPN, if there was an official job, would be official suspension giver. It's an awful job. You'd never be right. You would at least sometimes on this show I get to be right occasionally. You'd never be right as a suspension hander-outer. It's the worst job in the world. That's why commissioners have to get out of that space. That's why I've never understood Roger Goodell putting himself front and center on suspensions is absurd. Get out of that business. It is a no-win business. I mean, let's be honest, it's like being a marriage counselor. 50% of your clients will always hate you. And you're taking her side. You know, you're really backing the guy on that. That's a tough job. Marriage counselor. Nobody likes him. Heard brought to you by Johnsonville. We don't make sausage. We make family and sausage. Really? That's the spot? They make family and sausage? That's interesting. Conception of meat and people. Family into sausage? That was a remarkable thing to say. I think I'm going to eat some Johnsonville. They make people and sausage. Hey, sausage family stays together. I'm just ad-libbing now. Think about millennials. Here's one of the reasons. Now Dan Shaughnessy came on the show, and he said he thinks it's going to stick to Brady. And let me first say this. Millennials are now the biggest workforce in the country. They just surpassed Gen Xers. Millennials now are about 38% of the country, workers 35, 36, something like that. They just surpassed Gen Xers. Millennials are different. Millennials are young, like, 18 to 34, something like that. That's a millennial. They think differently. Ask yourself this. Almost everybody post-50 collected something. I remember going over to a neighbor's house, and he collected clocks. And he had mounds and shelves and storage rooms full of clocks. I thought it was odd. But I did agree to go into a man's basement who I barely knew, so shame on me. I've met people who collect baseballs and stamps and airline bottles and everything. Matchbooks. Guys collect cars and watches. How many of you guys ever collected shot glasses? But ask millennials what they collect. They don't really collect. They live in the moment. They don't live in the rearview mirror. They're not beholden to tradition. They're less religious, less likely to get married, less likely to be consumed with what happened yesterday. So young football fans, make them have fun, make them enjoy the moment. They're not collectors. They're not as nostalgic. They're not as beholden to tradition. They don't collect stuff like everybody post-50 did. Cars, horses, watches, baseballs, stamps. A lot of 19, 20, 22-year-olds, they don't do that. They move on to the next technology. Hell, they're off a phone in 4 months if there's a new hot phone available. To get a guy like me to move off a phone is much harder. I don't even have a BlueBerry. I got a boysenberry. So it's just different. I just think if you look at millennials, they're not like, they're just like living in the moment. And I don't think in the NFL, if you look at this, now Dan Shaughnessy disagrees. He thinks it's going to stick to Brady's legacy.
It's an asterisk. Guys don't have that. It's you go through your career. We still remember the Paul Honing thing from 50 years ago, and it does stay with you. And his record's so impeccable, and it's hard-earned, and he's been great and clutch and team guy and the American hero story right to the max. Top shelf, no dust all the way. And then to have a 4-game suspension, which I do think will be reduced. But in my view, if there's a 1-game suspension, that's enough to taint the legacy, and it's really unfortunate. I just don't think if it was reduced to a game, do you really believe it would taint his legacy? If it's reduced to a game, really? So Tom was suspended 1 game for ball deflation, which the league acknowledged didn't really alter the outcome of the game. Really? So because he wouldn't give up his cell phone and a couple of texts, I'm going to say, he's not as good as Joe Montana. I'm sorry. If this puppy gets reduced to a game, do you remember Lawrence Taylor getting suspended for 4? Joe Namath has mob ties. Big Ben, by the way, was recently suspended. Nobody talks about that anymore.
Yeah, but Colin, was Barry Bonds ever suspended? You think less of him, don't you?
Well, he took cattle steroids for, 8 years.
He cheated.
He took cattle steroids. That doesn't compare to this.
Yes, it does.
Oh, it does not.
Just in terms of being a great player and having a standing resume, it absolutely does.
Oh, yeah. I can change.
What other Super Bowl winning quarterbacks have missed games? Him and Roethlisberger, that's it. And 1 game's everything.
I don't think less of Big Ben. I don't think.
Yeah, the NFL compared the suspension to getting caught for PEDs.
Well, they're wrong. That's silly.
And you're wrong that it won't stick to his resume. So it looks like a lot of people are wrong today.
Taking cattle steroids and my head turns into a helium balloon is the same as, hey.
I don't know. Why don't we play the Adam Schefter soundbite?
I don't even like Adam Schefter anymore, to be honest with you. Barely tolerate him. Jim, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. Jim, go ahead.
Hey, Colin, how are you?
Good, bud.
Hey. Here's my point, is there's so many questions in this report about the air pressure gauges and all sorts of other things that to come down on them this hard when there is a shadow of doubt. And I look at that report, and on page 1, he has Jastrzemski's text to his mom just to embarrass the Patriots or Jastrzemski. And it has nothing to do with the report, but he puts it on page 1.
Oh, I don't know what I will defend Tom Brady, Jim, here. I don't like, in this day and age, having to give up my cell phone. I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm just not a big fan of that. I don't trust anybody with any information. So, and my cell phone, I'm not kidding you, it's the most boring phone in the world. I got nothing on this. Kid pictures. I don't have a single selfie on here. I don't do Instagram, although I am fascinated with Tumblr. But I'm not giving my phone up. I barely submit it to my wife. One time she freaked out over a stupid message. I'm like, I'm not even giving you my phone. You're ridiculous.
Colin Cowherd.
The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Adam Schefter joining us. Remember our favorite day earlier this year on this show?
That was a great day.
DeMarco Murray, you broke it on the air.
Well, it was a fun day because we were waiting for him to sign, waiting for it to become official, and I said here as we sat here, no, this is done. This is just getting done. He's going to be an Eagle. The deal is done. And those are the fun days in the business, right?
All right, here we go, Deflategate.
Yep.
I got 5-6 questions. First, your reaction on that phone from sources.
You know what's amazing is that you speak to people in New England and out of New England. And by the time you get done, your head is spinning because you speak to the people in New England and they're like, this is an outrage. This is ridiculous. This is incredible. And then you speak to other people and they're like, hey, they had some of this coming. They deserve this. You can't have anything compromise the integrity of the game. And so you're getting so many different vantage points. And I'm a guy who likes to deal in facts, not opinion. And you're hearing all these opinions and all this information. It's just enough to make your head combust with so much because everyone's all over the map and there's so many different opinions. But I think what happened here is that the league punished the Patriots as much for Spygate and their lack of cooperation as they did for deflating footballs. Their attitude in the whole thing, they didn't like the way that the Patriots went along with this investigation. They didn't like the fact that these footballs were deflated. But the Patriots will tell you that the NFL messed up in their procedures and protocols, and we'll see how that evolves over time.
Okay, question 2. Anger or anxiety this morning in New England?
Anger. There's nothing to be anxious about. They know what the penalties are. They know the fight that's ahead. They don't feel like they've been treated fairly, and they feel like it's time for them to defend their reputation. And so I think they're angry that they don't feel. I know everyone will feel differently, but they don't feel that they did anything wrong. They don't feel like they deflated footballs, they knowingly deflated footballs, that they were treated fairly by the NFL. It sounds crazy to people on the outside that view this and say, you can't break the rules of the game, you violated the integrity of the game. But I'm just telling you from their vantage point, they don't believe that they did anything wrong.
Your sources on that phone say they can win the appeal.
Yeah, it's funny. I got a text today, and I'll just read you the text, okay? It came from somebody that's connected in some way, okay?
To the story.
To the story, and the text came and says, Brady's team is unreal, I guess.
What's that mean?
And that was my text back. Unreal in what sense? Unreal in what sense? And they said, talented, big-name lawyers, Yee, Kessler, etc. Prediction equals won't miss a game. Now, we'll see how this turns out. Again, he'll have his say, and maybe a lot will be contingent upon who the hearing officer is in the appeal. But, look, there are people that believe that with the help of Don Yee, with the help of Jeffrey Kessler, who's been a thorn in the side for the NFL for a very long time, that Tom Brady will have a legitimate chance to have his suspension reduced, if not overturned. We'll find out.
Adam Schefter, question 4. Aside from the appeal, what's next?
Well, again, I think that the Patriots feel like their reputation was besmirched, fairly or unfairly. The people on the outside who are not Patriot fans would say absolutely fairly, integrity of the game compromised, they deserve what they got. I think the Patriots would say, like I said, we didn't do anything wrong here, and it's time for us to defend our honor. And we're going to see how they do that. But I don't think the Patriots are going to go quietly into the night. I think this story is just getting started.
Question 5. Jimmy Garoppolo. What do your sources say about New England's confidence in him?
I'll say this. When the Patriots made that pick, a lot of people said, here's a team on the cusp of a championship, good enough to compete for a Super Bowl, and they're going to use a second-round pick on a quarterback. What are they doing? Tom Brady can't be happy about that. But there were people, and someone said this to me, that said Bill Belichick projected 2 years out and that the draft the following year would not be good in quarterbacks, and they felt that Garoppolo would be better than anybody in the next draft class at the quarterback position. So he's thinking ahead, and this was really thinking ahead because now they're in a position where they very well, if Brady doesn't win his appeal, may need him to play 4 games. And if he does play 4 games, I think they are fully and supremely confident in Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, he's never started an NFL game, but I was talking to somebody in the Patriots organization last week. I said, okay, let's just say Brady gets suspended because we all thought it was going to go that way. What happens with Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, before I can even finish the sentence, great. Great? Oh, yeah. Impressive. Just what we thought. I'm like, okay. So we'll see. I mean, wouldn't that be just the Patriot way? That Tom Brady suspended, have this young guy step in, and by the way, we'd have 2 Eastern Illinois quarterbacks squaring off against each other in Week 5 after the Patriots bye when the Cowboys played the Patriots. Couldn't you just see him just lighting it up and becoming this next guy in that franchise being set for the next 10 years whenever Tom Brady does walk away? That would be so Patriot.
And finally, I forgot what question this was. Could have been 11. 6, my bad. I came so prepared today. You deal in facts, I deal in questions in numerical order. When the NFL, I'm kind of going back.
Yeah.
When Ted Wells rendered his decision or report, there was kind of a running narrative that the NFL had it and was just gauging the public's reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you confirm or deny that? When did they get it? Like they did, because when they release stuff doesn't always mean when they get it. Do we?
I don't know exactly when they got it. I know that, I know yesterday morning I had been told that Brady was going to be getting 4 games, and I emailed somebody, a couple of people in the league, and I said, hey, we think he's getting 4 games.
You were told yesterday.
Oh, well,
sweet.
Well, not sweet. We didn't use anything. Well, we said on air all day that it was a foregone conclusion he was going to be suspended. We believed it would be 4 games. We were told that not to run that story right now for a variety of reasons. But the fact of the matter is, we thought it would be 4 games, and we were told that they didn't fully decide on the actual discipline until about 3 o'clock yesterday. Now, I think many of the letters were being drafted, and so at that point, all they had to do was insert, okay, we decided it's
interesting
4 games.
Interesting.
But I think they knew all along, or they were feeling out exactly what direction it was going to go. I think the league knew it was going to come down and come down hard on the Patriots. And I think the league knew, after everything that it went through last year, that the league never again will take a disciplinary matter. I know this is totally different issues. We're talking about sportsmanship, and we're talking about legal issues that
but the climate's changed.
Child abuse and domestic violence, which cannot even be grouped together. But for a moment we will, because these are the issues the league is confronted. And the league, I believe, made a conscious decision to say that we never, ever will take a decision lightly again. We will be stiff on all punishment, and we'd rather err to that side.
And lose an appeal.
Than be soft and come under the type of criticism that it did last year. And so, in a way...
If you lose an appeal, nobody blames
I know this is going to sound crazy, but in a way, the Ray Rice case is still being felt. Even today...
Well, there's no question.
In the disciplinary matters that were handed down to New England Patriots.
I've been saying this all day. All suspensions are arbitrary. They are overwhelmingly based on climate. How we treat pot today. You've lived in Colorado.
Yeah.
Gay marriage. Juries are less tolerant on hate crimes. It's all suspensions. There is no mathematical formula, Adam. They've always been sort of, what's the current climate? How will the public react?
This, if you are an NFL team or an NFL player, this is the worst time that you could violate any rules.
Yes, this is it.
You don't want to do that.
That's right.
You don't want to do that.
Good seeing you, man.
A pleasure, pal.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast. Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals.
That one is gone.
A pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.